What's going on, everybody? John here, rocking the Steel Tie Spirits Cap. New distillery coming up in West Palm Beach. Had a chance to check out their soft opening last weekend. Great rum, great vodka. They have a great crew up there, so definitely looking forward to their grand opening this weekend. May take the camera along and shoot some video and photos of that, so stay tuned. But for today, wanted to chat about how I edit photos and my concert photos in particular in Lightroom, with both low light situations and lighting situations that were fairly decent. So let's jump into Lightroom and check it out. Okay, so we are in Lightroom now. I have a couple of photos that I chose from a couple of recent concerts I shot. What I typically do is I'll go down to the curves option and put a mark on my 3 points here for low, mid, and high tones. And in the shadows here, kind of bring that down a little bit, bring this up a little bit in the mid-tones, and bring up here to kind of just get a starting point. Then I go down and do some corrections, profile corrections and chromatic abrasion corrections, and then swoop back up to the top and work on my exposure. If the exposure is off, which, in most cases in low light situations, the exposure is not going to be great. So working on the exposure, bring that up just a little bit. Contrast, bring that down slightly. Usually crush my highlights down, because as you can see, if you put them up too much, you're getting all this noise here. So I'll crush down the highlights, the whites a little bit, bring up the shadows, bring up the blacks. Actually, no, keep the blacks down a bit. And a new feature that is on here now, which I previously didn't use before because I wasn't there, is this texture area here. So if you bring up the texture, you can see that it kind of brings a little bit more clarity into the picture. So if I bring that down, you can see it's a little fuzzy. Bring it back up, we're getting a little clearer. So put that up right about there, not too much, otherwise it's going to look a little ridiculous. And then I also bump up my clarity, which will also brighten the photo up a little bit. Usually about here or so. And then dehaze, I'll bring up. So kind of brings it out a little bit. And now you can see some of the lights, because there's smoke and fog and everything. You see a bunch of the streaks from that, which is pretty cool. And I noticed there's, a lot of red in here. They use a lot of reds and greens and blues, of course. So I'll go down and bring down the saturation a bit on the red, so it's not as bright there. Then mess around with the hue a little bit and the luminance. Bring that down just a bit. So now we have Jason a little bit more clear in picture here. Saturation I'll bring down. Vibrance up a little bit. Saturation up a little bit here. All right, so now we have a pretty good basis, from this, that. So we're looking a little bit better here, a little bit more clear. White balance, I like to make things a little on the cool side. It's all a matter of preference, really. And then I'll go down to my colors. I use the color portion of the HSL color area. I know some people just use the HSL. I like to use the color portion of it. Probably crush down these oranges a little bit. And you're really trying to play to the colors that are in there. Blue saturation, I'll probably bump that up a little bit so it brings out the areas over here behind him. Crush down the purple, magenta, and oftentimes what I'll do is also split toning. Now, not everybody does split toning. I did this a lot with street photography and landscapes, But I've noticed that doing it with concert photos is also kind of a neat idea as well. Brings out a little bit of color, skin tones. So I'll go to split toning. I'll do kind of like a neutral skin tone-ish type color, and you can see what it did. And then to offset that, I'll do this cooler, lighter blue color, so it kind of offsets a little bit. And now we have a pretty decent looking image. We can go a little bit further in noise reduction. So color, I'll usually pop up to 30. And luminance, I'll do about 25. If you go too much, then it starts to look too flat. So now you can see the noise got out of there. It's looking a little clearer. I might actually go down to 20 on the noise reduction because, leave a little bit of grain in there, which is kind of nice. And now we have a pretty decent photo. And from here, really, you can do some tweaks as you see fit. I'll probably bring up midtones a little bit more now that we finished bulk of the edit. So it brings out his face a little bit more. And I think that looks pretty good. So that's an example of what you can do, in a not a great lighting situation. And going to a good light situation, or a better light situation, I should say, with Sully here, same concept. With this one first, what I'll do is I'll crush down my highlights. There's a ton of highlights there. There's a lot of, they had this crazy V-looking light set up behind them, and a ton of bright light coming behind Sully. Bring down the whites a little bit. And from here, I'll go to my shadows, my midtones, and my highlights, and kind of try to create that S-curve. So bring down the shadows a bit, so it's bringing him a little bit more, and not too much of a ridiculous brightness behind him. Probably go right about here with the midtones and the highlights here, and kind of crush down here a little bit. All right, and again, I like things a little cooler. Let's bring that there a little bit. Then we mess with our exposure. And actually what I'll first do is, even though the purple is kind of cool, kind of bring that down a little bit because I think it's a little too much. Kind of go there. All right, so now we look at that. So now Sully is, relatively more clear. So now we can mess with our exposure a little bit, probably bump that a little bit, contrast down. Again, with our texture, bring it up to right about there, and you can see how more clear he's coming out, veins popping out. And probably just go a little bit lower with that actually. Clarity up to about here. So yeah, we're looking pretty good. And the dehaze I'll bring up. So we kind of darken it a little bit, but not too much. Vibrance I'm going to bring down on this, and saturation up. And go down here and remove chromatic abrasions, do our profile corrections. Noise reduction, again, you don't want to go too much. The lens I was using was the Canon 70-200, which is a beast of a lens, something that I rented because it's fairly expensive. But the lens is just incredible. So not a lot of noise, coupled with lower ISO was great. So now we're looking fairly well, and you can go along and tweak as you need to with the colors. But that is basically it. This photo I would do a little bit more work to, but just to give you an idea, this is how I would go into it. So there you have it. That's how I go about editing my concert photos within Lightroom. Depending on the lighting situations, depending on the photo, it's going to be different for you, but this is typically how I do it. Again, presets are awesome. There are several out there you can get for free. Matty Vogel has a great one that I used initially that I downloaded from his website, so I'll link his website below. But it was a good starting point for me. And then as you go on, you kind of get your own style, your own feel, and every concert and every situation is going to be a little different. There are times where your presets, they won't work. They won't be good for that type of situation, so you have to start from scratch like we did here. So let me know what you think, and I'd love to know how you edit your photos. Leave a comment below and let me know how you go about editing your photos. I'd love to hear that. If you like this video and found it helpful, smash that like button. It helps out a lot. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.